Daphne Argueta, and welcome back to GME Compass, where we turn the complexities of GME into clarity. And today we're going to be talking about how to build a high functioning GME team. Now, when people hear the words high functioning team, they often picture a team where everything runs perfectly. Everyone communicates, nothing is falling through the cracks, every deadline is being met, and there's never any problems. But if you worked in GME for more than 5 minutes, you will know that that's not the reality. Because in GME, something is always happening. A survey is due, a site visit is coming, a resident or faculty member needs your attention, recruitment is just around the corner, someone forgot to complete an accreditation requirement, and there's always at least one unexpected challenge awaiting for you on a daily basis. So when I talk about a high functioning GME team, I'm not talking about perfection. I am talking about a team that knows how to work together, a team where people understand their roles, the communication is consistent and clear, the responsibilities are shared, and the success of the program doesn't depend on one person carrying everything alone. In today's episode, we're going to talk about what a GME team actually is, what causes teams to struggle, and the three pillars that help high functioning GME teams succeed: clarity, communication, and shared ownership. We have no financial disclosures. Content shared by GME Compass is based on our own personal experiences in graduate medical education and reflect our own professional insights. The perspectives shared are our own and do not represent the views of any institution or organization that we are or have been affiliated with. Before we get started, by the end of this episode, you'll be able to define the characteristics of a high functioning GME team and recognize the factors that contribute to team dysfunction and operational inefficiencies. We'll also explore practical strategies to promote clarity, communication, and shared ownership within your own programs. My goal is for you to leave today's episode with actionable ideas that you can apply within your own GME team, regardless of your role. So let's get started. Before we even talk about building a high functioning GME team, we need to define what that team is. Because in graduate medical education, the team isn't just people or staff working together, it is multiple roles with different responsibilities, all contributing to the success of the program. At the center of every program is a program director, the PD. The PD is ultimately responsible for all of the program and provides the leadership, the vision, and the oversight. They're focused on the educational quality, accreditation, and just the overall direction of the program. Supporting the program director is often an associate program director or APD. Depending on the program, APDs may oversee curriculum, resident development, recruitment, wellness initiatives, and other specific areas of the program. To help translate the program's vision into They help translate the program's vision into day-to-day educational operations. Then there's the program coordinator. We're often the people connecting all the moving pieces: operations, recruitment, onboarding, accreditation, committee meetings, evaluations, communication, and everything that falls in between. We keep the program moving forward. Faculty. Faculty play a critical role as educators and mentors, evaluators, and also clinical role models. They provide the teaching and the feedback that help trainees develop into independent physicians. And then finally, the residents and the fellows. They're not just participants in the program, they are very much part of the team. They provide that valuable feedback, they identify opportunities for improvement, and then they help shape the culture and the experience of the program. So, the important thing here to remember is that each of these roles has a different responsibility, but they're all working towards the same goal, which is providing an exceptional educational experience while preparing the next generation of physicians. And when those roles are working together effectively, that's when a program becomes a high functioning GME team. A functioning GME team doesn't mean everything is perfect. It doesn't mean that there are no issues. And it definitely doesn't mean that things never go wrong. Because in GME, something is always coming up. What it does mean is that there is a structure behind how the team actually functions. First, roles are clear. Everyone understands what they own, what they're responsible for. You're not constantly wondering who's following up on this, is this my responsibility? The clarity alone removes a tremendous amount of stress. The second is communication flows. People are talking, updates are being shared, expectations are being discussed, priorities are aligned. You're not chasing information or guessing what's happening. The third, ownership is shared. The coordinator isn't the only one carrying everything alone. Faculty are engaged, leadership is involved, responsibilities are distributed across the team. Everyone understands that the success of the program belongs to all of us, not just one of us. And finally, decisions are aligned. The team understands what the priorities are. The goals are clear, and everyone is moving towards that same direction. When those four things are happening, you can feel it. The things are moving faster, there's less confusion, problems are getting addressed earlier. And instead of constantly reacting, the program starts to function in the way that it was designed to. Not because everything is perfect, but because the team is now working together. What breaks a GME team? And I've been in this position before, um, the position where it feels like everything eventually comes back to you. And most of the time, it doesn't happen overnight. Things are still getting done, the program is still running, residents are still being trained, meetings are still happening. But underneath the surface, the team isn't really functioning the way that it should. The first thing I see all the time is unclear roles, especially between the program director and the program coordinator. And I often call this the dynamic duo of GME, because if these two roles are not aligned, the entire program is going to feel it because it's not clear who owns what, who's making what decisions, who was following up, who was responsible. Things are either don't get done or they default to one person. And a lot of times that's the coordinator. The second thing that breaks a team is poor communication. And I don't just mean emails. I mean expectations are not discussed. Priorities are not aligned. Assumptions are made instead of conversations happening. You think something is being handled, your program director thinks something else, and then suddenly you're both moving forward with completely different expectations. And how many times have you heard, "Oh, I thought you were doing that." And by the end of the conversation, the deadline is usually tomorrow at 11:59. And then there's the biggest one. Everything falls on one person, usually the coordinator. You're tracking everything. You're following up on everything. You're remembering everything. You're managing everything. At some point, it stops feeling like a team and it starts feeling like you're personally holding the entire program together. And that's when it becomes exhausting. That's when it becomes overwhelming. And that's when it becomes unsustainable. The difficult part is that none of this usually happens all at once. It builds slowly over time, one responsibility at a time, one missed conversation at a time, one unclear expectation at a time, until one day you realize this isn't really functioning as a team anymore. That's exactly why we need to talk about what actually makes a GME team work. So, if that's what breaks a team, what actually makes them work? And I actually think this is where the shift happens because it's easy to assume that if a team is struggling, the solution is finding better people, a better program director, a better coordinator, more engaged faculty. But in my experience, that's usually not the issue. Most of the times, it's not happening because you're not having better people. It's about how the team is actually functioning together. Because you can have incredibly talented people in every role, a strong program director, a strong and highly organized coordinator, dedicated faculty, engaged resident and fellows. But if those roles aren't working together, things aren't things are still going to feel disconnected. One of the biggest lessons I've learned is that a high functioning teams, they learn how to use each other's strengths. Your program director brings leadership, vision, and direction. The coordinator brings structure, organization, operational expertise. Faculty, education, mentorship, and clinical perspective. And your residents and fellows, they provide the feedback and the insight into the learner's experience. When those strengths are all working independently, the team struggles. When those strengths are working together, everything changes. Communication is improving, responsibilities are clearer, decisions are aligned, and the work starts to feel shared instead of carried by one person. And that's when a group of individuals become a team. That's when the program starts functioning at its highest level. And when you really break it down, there are a few core things that determine whether GME is functioning well or just simply getting by. And over time, I found it comes to three pillars: clarity, communication, and shared ownership. And I know now these sound simple, but they show up in very real ways every single day. If these three things are present, you'll feel it. Things are moving faster, conversations are easier, responsibilities feel more balanced, and you're not constantly trying to figure out everything out all out on your own. But when one of these pillars are missing, you'll feel that too. Things become unclear, communication starts to break down, work begins falling on one person, and the team starts operating in silos instead of working together. So, I want to take a closer look at each one of these because I think this is where the real change starts to happen. Let's start with the first pillar, clarity. In my experience, many team issues aren't actually communication issues, they're clarity issues. People aren't intentionally avoiding work, they're often unsure of what they're responsible for. Who's handling recruitment? Who owns orientation? Who's going to follow up on these missing evaluations? Who's responsible for submitting information to the GME office? Who communicates with faculty? If those answers aren't clear, work is going to start falling through the cracks. Or even worse, everything again is going to start defaulting on one person. You're going to see that that's a theme, usually the coordinator. Clarity starts with understanding the role. Every member of the team should understand not only their role, but how their role connects to everyone else's. Next, responsibilities. What specifically is each person accountable for? Not assumptions. No, oh, I thought someone else was doing that. Clear ownership. I am doing this. I need you to do such and such. And finally, expectations. What does success look like? How often should we communicate? What are our timelines? What are our priorities? When teams take the time to define the roles, the responsibilities, expectations, interesting things start to happen. Decisions become easier, or decision making becomes easier. Communication becomes more efficient, and people spend less time guessing and more time actually contributing. Because when people know what they're expected of them, they're much more likely to be successful. And that's why clarity is the foundation for everything else. The second pillar is communication. And when I say communication, I don't mean sending extra or more emails. I mean creating intentional opportunities for the team to stay aligned. Because one of the fastest ways for a team to become frustrated is when people are operating with different information or different priorities or different assumptions. We've all experienced it. A deadline is approaching, a task wasn't completed, a meeting wasn't scheduled, and then someone says, "Oh, I thought someone else was handling that." Most of the time, that's not a performance issue, it's a communication issue. High functioning teams communicate consistently. They share updates, they discuss priorities, they check in regularly, and they don't assume that everyone is working from the same information. One thing that I've learned over the years is that communication doesn't need to be complicated. Sometimes it's just a weekly touch point with your program director. It's a standing team meeting. Sometimes it's simply taking 5 minutes to clarify an expectation before moving on. The goal isn't more meetings. The goal is alignment. Because when the communication is working, people spend less time chasing the information and more time moving the work forward. And when the communication breaks down, confusion is what fills that gap. And that's why communication isn't just the pillar of high functioning team, it what keeps everyone moving in that same direction towards the goal. The third pillar is shared ownership. And in my opinion, this is often the difference between a team that survives and a team that thrives because the ownership isn't shared. Everything eventually falls on one person, the coordinator. The coordinator becomes the reminder system, the project manager, the follow up person, the calendar, the historian, and sometimes even the decision maker. That's not teamwork, that is dependency. And dependency creates risk because if one person is unavailable, the entire program feels it. Shared ownership means that everyone understands that the success of the program, belongs to all of us, not just one person. The first part of shared ownership is faculty engagement. Faculty should be involved in the program beyond just showing up to teach. They should participate in evaluations, committees, recruitment, curricular discussions, and continuous improvement efforts. The more engaged faculty are, the stronger the program becomes. The second part is leadership accountability. Program directors and leadership teams set the tone for the entire program. If expectations are established, communication is prioritized, and commitments are followed through on, the rest of the team is much more likely to do the same. Leadership isn't about assigning work, it's about modeling the behaviors and expectations you want the team to embrace. And finally, shared responsibility. This is where the team becomes more distributed rather than dumped. Everyone contributes, everyone follows through, everyone's taking ownership of the program's success. Because the reality is that no single person can carry a whole entire GME program by themselves. Not the program director, not the coordinator, not the faculty, not the residents. It really takes all. And when the ownership is truly shared, something very powerful happens and the workload actually feels lighter. People become more engaged, problems get solved faster, and the team starts functioning as a team of a collection of individuals. And this is why shared ownership isn't about just doing less. It's about making sure that one person isn't carrying more than what they should. Because when ownership is shared, the load is lighter and the impact is greater. You might be listening to this and thinking, yeah, Daphne, okay, that sounds great, but I'm a coordinator. I don't control faculty engagement. I don't control leadership accountability. And yes, that is true. We can't force people to engage. We can't force ownership, but we can create opportunities for it. As coordinators, we are often the connectors of the team. We can clarify responsibilities. We can create systems that make ownership visible. We can communicate expectations. We can bring the right people into the conversations. We can facilitate committee work. We can provide reminders and follow ups without taking ownership away from others. There's a difference between supporting the work and owning all the work. And learning the difference is one of the most important growth moments for a coordinator, and it was for me. Supporting the work means helping the team succeed. Owning all the work means carrying responsibility that belongs to everyone else. And that's where many coordinators get stuck. Oh, that's where we get stuck. Shared ownership starts by recognizing the success of the program is not yours alone to carry. It is the responsibility of the entire team. Sometimes the most impactful thing a coordinator can do is simply bring people together, create the structure, and help keep everyone aligned because the team succeeds when the program succeeds. So, as we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final thought. High functioning GME teams don't happen by accident. They don't happen because one person works harder, and they certainly don't happen because one coordinator carries everything. They are built intentionally through clarity, through communication, and through shared ownership. When people understand their roles, communication is consistent and responsibility is shared, and teams become stronger. Programs become more efficient. Problems get solved faster, and the work becomes more sustainable for everyone involved. As coordinators, we play an important role in making that happen, not by carrying the entire program ourselves, but by creating that structure, building connections, and helping keep everyone aligned. Remember, your goal isn't to do all the work. Your goal is to help the team work together because the strongest GME programs aren't built by one person, they're built by a team. There is no I in team. And when the teams work together, everyone benefits: faculty, residents, fellows, program leadership, and ultimately the patients that we serve. And that's what makes a high functioning GME team. Thank you for joining us for this episode of GME Compass. We hope that today's discussion provided practical strategies to help you build stronger and more collaborative GME teams. If you found this episode helpful, we'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below and let us know what has helped you in your team function more effectively. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on GME Compass on social media for more conversations on GME operations, accreditation and leadership, and professional development. Until the next time.